Well, as you can tell by my magnificent hairdo, this is still Sunday evening, June 7th, 2009. With neither one of us feeling well today, we did something that we do rather frequently. At 11 o'clock, tuned in to a church service conducted by the minister of the First Methodist Church, Wichita, Kansas. The minister is a good speaker and a thoughtful preparer of his sermons. And I believe they're his sermons. You know, a lot of preachers, having been in the church a lot, different places and so on, I became aware that many preachers are preaching somebody else's sermon. Well, with a little modification. I'm not accusing them of plagiarism particularly, but this sermon was timely, pertinent, and for me and for my wife, uplifting. He expressed his personal anger that he experienced last Sunday as he heard about the doctor being killed in a church. And in a sanctuary. Churches are sanctuaries from the ills and evils and pressures of the world for many of us, probably most of us that go to church. And you know, he felt violated, and he was acknowledging, you know, he felt anger. And then he gave some more thought to it and kind of led us through some of his personal views and suffering through this thing. And then he got around to saying that last Sunday afternoon he got a telephone call from somebody that he didn't know, and that he was rather surprised to find was another minister, and a minister from a very right-wing kind of church, a very conservative church. This minister in this particular Methodist church would be the first to tell you that he is pretty liberal. Magnificent church services every time we watch them. But he's, you know, he's educated, he's sophisticated, he isn't just a pounder and a yeller. Yeah, his sermons are thoughtful, and sure, they accuse me of being a liberal, so, you know, I appreciate the fact that he is an intellectual, not just a Bible thumper. Well, this person surprised him by saying who he was, and he's telling us this to indicate that out of all the evil of this murder, something good happened. Here's this very conservative, very right-wing, very anti-abortion, and I'm not saying this other minister's pro-abortion, I don't know anything about that, but the preacher that's way over there on the right is calling, and first thing he says to this reverend, and I'm sorry I can't remember our reverend's name there at the church. He says, "I've checked you out." The preacher indicated, you know, I was a little surprised. "What do you mean you checked me out?" "Oh yeah," he said, "and I'll tell you how I did it." He said, "I went to your church's webpage, and I read what your church stands for." And the preacher speaking to us over the television today went through some of the very fine statements that are on their webpage as to what their church believes. And among other things, as I recall, was a statement in there that stressed love, stressed acceptance of all of God's creation and all of God's people. Well, to make the next step clear, I don't know how many other ministers they called I don't know what they did in the way of going to the radio stations, but they ended up having a Friday, I think it was Friday, meeting with a widely divergent population of human beings who subscribe to a very wide range of churches. You know, black and white, red and yellow, extremely liberal, extremely conservative, and all across the continuum. And the emphasis was on love and on acceptance of all points of view and not any deriding of anybody's point of view. And he said there were plenty of anti-abortion people present and plenty of pro-choice people present, and none of that hindered the celebration of love, the celebration of grieving for what had happened, but a healing thing, and a thing that, well, he said, you know, it's not what you say, it's what you do. And there was a lot of doing, a lot of saying, but the very evidence of who was there and the way they all cooperated and were respectful of all points of view, it wasn't just the words, it was what they did in coming together to celebrate the love of God, the love of the human race, and God's love for all people. I shed a tear or two. Don't hesitate to say that I did. And his final point was, out of the tragedy of the doctor's murder, something good came out of it in Wichita, Kansas.